Today, the modern President of the United States travels inside a highly armored motorcade, completely surrounded by elite security. But for the men who held the office in its earliest days, the presidency was practically a death trap. On the Declaration of Independence, we find Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. Both died on the exact same day, July 4, 1826. Looking at the date at the top, it was exactly 50 years after the country was born. 5 years later, James Monroe died on July 4th, too, and James Madison barely missed the date, passing away on June 28th. It sounds like a bizarre curse. But while assassins and supernatural timing grab our attention, the most lethal threats to early presidents were actually microscopic. Rather than foreign enemies or elaborate plots, America's early commanders-in-chief were taken down by a combination of archaic medical practices and the biological hazards lurking inside the White House itself. For over a century, the history books said William Henry Harrison died from catching pneumonia after giving an incredibly long 2-hour inauguration speech in the freezing rain. Modern researchers have found that he didn't even get sick until 3 weeks after that speech. Medical experts now believe he actually suffered from typhoid fever or septic shock. If we examine this early illustration of the White House, we can trace the problem to its grounds. The president's drinking water was severely contaminated, and that bad water killed him after just 31 days in office. Then you have Zachary Taylor. During a sweltering 4th of July celebration in Washington, he desperately tried to cool off by eating a massive bowl of raw cherries and chugging several glasses of milk. Because food safety basically didn't exist at the time, Taylor contracted acute gastroenteritis. Despite rumors in the 1990s that he was poisoned due to rising pre-Civil War tensions, forensic scientists checked his body and confirmed it really was just the bad cherries. Between the water and the kitchen, the early White House functioned as a deadly biological hot zone where basic sanitation was entirely missing. Even if a president avoided the food and water, getting sick meant facing early American doctors. When George Washington developed a highly treatable throat infection, medical intervention turned fatal. As we can see in this chart, his physicians tried to cure him through bloodletting. They drained 80 ounces of blood from his body, a volume equal to about 6 modern energy drinks. This portrait shows our 20th president, James Garfield, who fell victim to a shooting just months into his term. Yet, as this medical schematic demonstrates, the assassin's bullets miraculously bypassed his major internal organs. He initially survived the attack. The real damage occurred when his doctors stepped in. They repeatedly probed inside his open wounds with unsterilized metal instruments and unwashed fingers. Their interference punctured his liver and introduced massive infections. Garfield suffered in agony for 80 days before dying from what was essentially severe medical malpractice. For these early leaders, surviving an assassin's bullet was entirely possible. It was surviving the doctors tasked with treating them that required a miracle. But let's say you avoided the bad water, the dangerous food, and the doctors. You still had to carry the psychological and physical weight of the office, which acted as a slow, compounding killer. Franklin D. Roosevelt managed the intense stress of the Great Depression and World War II while secretly battling polio, which had left him paralyzed. Over his 4 terms, he developed severe high blood pressure and heart disease. Looking closely at his face here, you can see the heavy toll. During his 4th term, FDR was simply sitting to pose for a portrait at his Georgia retreat when he suffered a massive, fatal stroke. Or consider Ulysses S. Grant, whose post-presidential years were filled with extreme financial stress after losing his life savings in an investment scam. To ensure his family wouldn't be left broke, he spent his final days desperately writing his memoirs while actively dying of throat cancer. The presidency operated as an all-consuming machine. It extracted a brutal physical toll from its occupants until there was simply nothing left. When you look back at the dirty water, the archaic medicine, and the complete lack of sanitation, any early American president surviving their term required a tremendous amount of luck. Fast forward to the modern era, and the environment is completely different. Thanks to the Secret Service, advanced water treatment, and top-tier medical care, the average lifespan of presidents has skyrocketed. In this photo, we see Ronald Reagan, who lived to be 93 years old, setting a longevity standard for modern occupants of the office. And here is Jimmy Carter, who recently set a new ultimate record by surviving past the century mark to reach 100 years old. Today, the modern presidency commands absolute global power from a highly secure fortress, but history proves that without modern science and basic hygiene, the commander-in-chief was completely defenseless against something as simple as a dirty glass of water or a bowl of raw fruit.